Hey, courageous investors. We're so excited to continue our conversation with Natalie Born, where she's really unpacking for us what it takes to invest using your identity and to fearlessly go at it. So let's join the dialogue and continue the conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, Natalie, I want to switch gears a little bit, um, and just get from your perspective. You've consulted with numerous companies. I know you're building your own company. You have your platform that you're working on. Um, what do you feel like from yourself in your life is the most courageous thing you've done, personally or in your business?
Sure. Well, I mean, for sure, it's launching out. I mean, I think I don't know who to attribute this quote to, so I'll just attribute it to the last person I heard say it, which was Kevin O'Leary. He basically says, a paycheck is the drug that makes you forget your dreams, right? And I
Mm.
think that oftentimes the fear of the unknown has stopped a lot of people from actually launching things that they were called to launch or doing things that they were called to do. And that's very true in my own personal story. In 2020, I launched the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I thought five people would listen. I really did not think it would be successful. I thought maybe some undergrads at Georgia Tech who are really nerdy and want to think about innovation will listen to this. It ended up being a top 25 podcast listened to in 80 countries. So that was something that I didn't even have a grid for. And then in 2022, I launched my keynote speaking and facilitating, helping leaders kind of facilitate either through hard conversations or strategy plans or things like that. And then in 2023, I launched my book, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. And it's not just a book, there's a study guide and a masterclass that goes with it. And then this year, I launched IML Media, which specializes in just, podcast production and all this other stuff that helps leaders get their voices out there. And then I have my advisory business as well. And each one of those steps was a leap of faith. I mean, I went kicking and screaming, if you will. Like I didn't want to necessarily, call myself an entrepreneur. I was very comfortable helping other people launch ideas. But when God called me to launch things for myself, that was where I struggled, honestly. I mean, it was like, okay, well, I can help them launch five ideas that all created, $5 million each. But then when it came to myself, it was almost like, fear, and it's out there for all of us, is what holds people back from truly being successful. So as I'm confronting leaders about facing their own fears, God is speaking to me personally about, well, that's all great and well for them. What about you? And you hate that when the table gets turned on you and the mirror gets turned on you, and now you're looking at yourself saying, yeah, you're right. So for me, this has been just a journey of faith of just saying yes, even when you don't know if the other step will appear, but knowing that you have this experience that you've gained over time that can definitely be deployed in different ways. So it's been exciting. I would say it's probably just for all of us when we place a bet on ourself or something that God has put in us. It's always a little scary. But I'm beginning to realize that it's better to be out of my comfort zone and with God than in my comfort zone and without Him. And so that's just where we're at. We're just walking that line.
That's so
Yeah,
good.
yeah, that's so good. Doug and I say all the time that we always encourage investors and people to do things God's way, but the way He teaches us is He makes us go through the exact same thing. And I love what you said. You said, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
don't understand this, but I'm going to keep going. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand. And I really encourage our listeners. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward, even though you have the fear.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think Natalie did a good job of sharing that. So just in your consulting life and working with entrepreneurs, can you just tell us a story of where you've seen an entrepreneur do something courageous, whether it's investing their time, their energy, their money, and it actually made a significant change within their business?
Yeah, I mean that is the heart of what I do. And it's interesting. I'll kind of share a story from 2020. In 2020, I had a lot of different companies I was working with, obviously 2020 was very interesting, right? You had certain businesses that were free falling and not doing well, but then you had other businesses that were surging and they were struggling to actually keep up with the growth. And so one company in particular I worked with, they're an online whiteboarding tool software, and everyone was reaching out to them saying, "Hey, we are now all at home and we don't actually know how to collaborate with one another. Like, how about that, right? Like everyone's trapped in their houses, and we still have all these big initiatives, big projects. We don't know how to collaborate." And so seeing them think about a whole new business model overnight, so many organizations, so many companies had to innovate in 2020, that it's almost ridiculous, right? When you think about how people had to turn on a dime and turn their business on their head, and seeing them come up with a solution that said, we're going to onboard all these consultants and we're going to deploy them to go online and help organizations work better together. I think it just showed me that under the right set of circumstances and the right set of pressure, any organization can be nimble. Sometimes people have this thing where it's like a slow trickle and a slow burn, and then they eventually fade. And then other times, unfortunately, it happens very quickly. But the difference between those organizations is, and the organization that survives versus trickles away or dies quickly, is the ones that's constantly thinking outside the box, the one that is constantly thinking about how do we turn this challenge on its head and how do we think differently about it. And so it was just powerful to see them say, we've got to blow up everything we've ever done and create a new business model, create a new revenue stream that actually speaks to the needs of the organization. And that revenue stream for them continues. And it came out of a necessity. It came out of pressure, but now they're able to use that as a long tail revenue stream for them because they were able to get out of the fray and actually focus on how do we deliver a real solution for our customers. So when I look back on that, I'm like, such an incredible organization, such an incredible way to be like, okay, push the noise aside. Let's figure out how we're going to help our customer, which always ultimately helps you as well, right?
Right. No, that I think that's so good. We often say people want plans, systems, and they want them to remain in place and go on forever. But we've talked to numerous people. Real change and significant impact comes when you're put under pressure and you have to do something different. And I think, like you said, 2020 was a time that many companies had to figure it out. And those that adapted, faced their fear, and walked through courageously were actually able to make the impacts that you described. So yeah, totally agree there.
Natalie, that was such a powerful story that you just talked about in 2020 and the way that people overcame. When we talk to investors who oftentimes feel like with any move of the market, they're in the midst of 2020 again, right? We've all seen the statistics about the mindset of fear and the mindset of, oh no, not again happening. How would you recommend that investors look a little bit out into the future towards a better world? In other words, the impact of their investment, because in our space, too often people feel the only way my investments can do something good is if I make less return or if I'm concessionary and give something away. Do you have any insights or any thoughts around that
Yeah.
dichotomy?
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. I want to take it maybe even from a different angle for a second, just to
Love
think
it.
about, how do we know something is worthwhile in investing in the first place? Like, and I think about, organizations, I think about companies. Like, if I was to sit in front of 10 companies today and say, who's going to be successful in the long haul, right? Who's going to be successful in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What I would actually be looking for is a couple of things. I recently read this McKinsey study that said like only 1 in 4 organizations truly outperform their peers because they're they're focused on that courageous growth, right? That courageous investment in the future. And so when I think about what makes somebody able to do that, I think about the fact that I'm asking myself as I'm looking, do they understand their vision, their mission, and their values? What is their leadership team like? what types of big bets have they made? Not that they all had to work out, but what types of big bets have they made? Have they stopped slow moving train wrecks within their organization? Nothing is more terrifying than talking to an organization who says, "Oh, yeah, the customer told us they didn't want this a year ago, but we're still tinkering with it." You're like, "Oh my gosh, stop what you're doing." And so have they created a growth mindset in their people?
Mm.
There's this interesting thing I do with teams, which is I will have them, we'll come up with an idea together, and then the idea has to switch hands. We may have like a bunch of different groups set up. The idea has to keep switching hands, and then it has to come back as not, it's no longer that first person's idea. It's now evolved. And asking the question, can they be nimble? Can they think on their toes? Can they add to someone's idea, or are they just fighting for their own place of wanting their idea heard? And so, oftentimes, if you look at the construct of the organization, how they think about talent, team, how they deploy time and resources, you can actually extrapolate out what their success trajectory will actually look like. And on the flip side of that, the same is true when we're investing and we're holding these investments, hoping they're going to be successful in the long haul. It's really comes down to the dynamics within the organization, because we know this, right? It could be tariffs one day. It could be, economic uncertainty the next. It could be a war in this country or that country. And so there's constantly going to be shifting plates right underneath our feet. But the organization that can be nimble, that can think outside the box, that can solve solutions in different ways and not be beholden to one thought, one idea, one way of always doing it, those are the organizations that are going to be successful for the long haul. And so in that way, I mean, part of what you're looking at as an investor, you're not just looking for what's stable. I think that that should be part of what's in your portfolio. You're looking to take a bet or a risk on those who are able to think differently, to move outside of the box, if you will, and to really be able to grasp the fact that if I keep my customer at the center of everything I build, and I'm constantly in contact with them, then I will build a future that they want and need, versus building something off to the left that nobody cares about. And that oftentimes happens in product development world, because
Yeah.
we get this really great idea in our head and we're off to the races. And so bringing it back to the principles of innovation, what makes you nimble, what makes you able to move quickly, is part of the goal of how to even know where to invest or where people should invest. It's really, hey, this is a team that works well together. Whatever we put them on, they're going to win.
Yeah. So very, very helpful. Those aspects when you were sharing some of that team dynamic of, if an individual is a member of a team and they're constantly promoting themselves and their ideas, or protecting themselves and their concepts from everyone else, it's there's an aspect of toxicity, but also dysfunction that turns off the other folks. And investing is really no different in that same sort of decision tree.
Yeah, it's really, I bet it's a very similar to what you guys are looking at. You mentioned it, you guys have said it a couple different times, that you're looking at the team and the leadership, and you're really trying to understand how healthy is this team, and are they going to be able to traverse all the challenges that are going to lay before them, because we know the challenges will be there. And so a good team, can really cut through some of that noise. And I love, one of my favorite movies is The Gladiator. And there's this scene in The Gladiator where he's telling them, hey, we come out here all the time, everyone gets picked off and dies, but if we'll stay together, if we'll fight the battle together, we'll actually win. And then there's this part where he tells them to interlock their shields. And he said, okay, now we're going to move as one. And the team that can move as one is the team that always wins, right? You have these people who are out there just for themselves, and they're going to get picked off pretty quickly. But the team that moves as one, they can be less intelligent. They don't have to have the MBAs. They don't have to have all of that. The ability to move as one is more powerful than somebody who is an independent thinker but isn't really willing to play well with others. And so that team aspect, that team dynamic, becomes so critical to, I'm sure, the investment landscape as you guys look at, what companies are worthwhile to invest in.
Yeah, that's so incredibly helpful. It's a great lens for our listeners to think about their investments with. And it's one of the things, as we've talked people can be such a immediate, and also oftentimes undetected, right? The person who shows up faithfully for 4 years and in all regards, a model employee, and then they jump on a forklift and drive it into the wall, and the plant burns to the ground. It's just a great opportunity to see when people are working together, working as one, that aspect of having a greater impact or better world, as well as the better results that we're all striving for.
That's right. Yeah. And I keep wondering, that person that drove the forklift and burned the plant to the ground, how many missing conversations did they not get to have? That
There
if
you
they
go.
had just had those conversations with their leader, they could have not been so disgruntled in that manner, right? It's like almost like we forget that, it's not just about the work. It's also about the work of the work, which is the leadership component, the piece that really makes a difference and drives change, which is, do you know who you lead? Do you know their kids' names? Do you know what their aspirations are? And are you motivating them or demotivating them? And unfortunately, we can't really, I believe, motivate people. I think most people come self-motivated, but we can absolutely demotivate an employee with our behavior.
So
It's
good.
such a great encouragement, because oftentimes we focus as investors on what is the worldly impact, when the internal team building and respect to the individuals can be such a multiplication of real impact. And that's just, again, a great reminder for us as investors.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Natalie, I think you showed all of our listeners why we were so excited to have you join us today. We really appreciate your time. As we begin to wrap up, can you just tell our listeners the best way to connect with you and just receive more of your material?
Sure. Well, you can find me at Innovation Meets Leadership on almost every platform. And then you can go to innovationmeetsleadership.com to learn more, check out the podcast, and of course, connect on LinkedIn as well. It's just Natalie Born.
Awesome. And then the question I want to close with today is, if our listeners could take just one courageous step this week in their with their time, their energy, their money, what would you recommend?
Okay, it's the same step I would give to myself about 5 months ago. And it's take the step that you've been delaying. I think that courage isn't about always these grand leaps. Sometimes it's about these small yeses, these small steps we take that would move us forward. And so oftentimes, we think that we have to take this big leap, but and I talk to people all the time and they're like, hey, I don't really hear from God. I'm like, well, what is the last thing he told you to do? Let's just start there. Take that step. Take that bold step to say yes. Maybe it's to have the hard conversation. Maybe it's to start the podcast. Maybe it's to start the business. Whatever it is, just go ahead and take that step, because when we do that, huge doors open on the other side of our obedience, but we don't really realize it until we're willing to take that step forward. So that would be my encouragement to all of us is just go ahead and take the step that we've been delaying.
So good. So good. What a
Very,
way to
very
close.
appreciated.
Take the step that you have been delaying. And listeners, just a little inside baseball. Natalie is one of the individuals that helped Doug and I take the step in order to do this podcast. So thank you so much, Natalie, for joining us. Listeners, once again, we like to thank you for joining DR Dialogue, where conviction drives change so your money can do better. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.